worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here for my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That's right, you can just call me Fuego for short, and I welcome you. And I'm so stoked to have you here for another Fresca Fuego review. That's right, this is the third installment of the John Wick franchise, once again directed by Chad Stahelski and Derek Kolstad, I want to say. So, yeah, written by Kolstad, except whereas he did the screenplays for the previous two all by himself, with this one he did the story and then brought on a bunch of other people to assist with the screenplay. I'm assuming because of the fact that this is legit the most over-the-top, action-packed, whacked-as-fuck entry in this series that I have seen as of yet, but Chad Stahelski directing the hell out of it again, and obviously Keanu doing his best, well, seriousness that he can muster in this. And yeah, I just got done watching this. John Wick 3 is subtitled Parabellum, which basically translates to go into war or something to that effect, or prepare for war, something like that. I don't know if it's Latin or what the foreign language is. I probably should have double checked on that, but there was one point in the film where it's like, if you want peace, prepare for war, and I want to say that was like lyrics in a Children of Bodom song at one point as well. But so yeah, here the format that I always approach these films with on Enfuegotainment is a little bit of Bueno, a little bit of Malo, and a little bit of Feo. So first, before I get specifically into what's good about this film, I was late to the John Wick party. I know the first one came out in 2014. I believe the second one was 2017, maybe 2016 or 2017. There's been about maybe 2.5 years in between these entries. And here in 2019, we have the third one. And I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say, it might not be the best one, but for me, it was definitely the most entertaining. Seriously. Now, the first film was definitely the most emotional, and I would probably say the best acted, especially by Keanu. I'll get into where Keanu's acting falls in this particular entry. But yeah, so the first one was like the most emotional and like hit you in the feels, especially because I'm gonna spoil the first and the second film. In the first film, like, his wife dies, I believe from cancer, if I remember correctly, and John Wick is basically, he used to be a contract killer and he's been out of the game for many years, and then he gets back into the game after the dog that his wife had given him, like, these guys break into his home and, you know, they kill the dog and then he goes after them and he gets back into it, and we learn all about this hotel for these vigilante hitmen, you know, called the Continental. It's really fascinating mythology and groundwork that they laid out, and you find out that there is kind of a worldwide system of all of these. There's this underground network of assassins, and it's really dope. I can't wait to see what they do with the Continental TV series that they are apparently working on, which is going to be a spin-off and just fill out the world with, who knows if Keanu is actually going to be in any of those, maybe guest star on a couple, but that's a show that I'm stoked for. So the first one, very emotional, well acted, I thought, hit you in the feels the most, and just laid this awesome groundwork for universe building. Second one, better action, I must admit, but just didn't really get you story-wise quite as much. It involves his car getting messed up. I was just kind of scratching my head, and I'm like, this is more of the same, but just with like, it's bigger and flashier, bigger budget, made more money too, but I don't know, you had some Ruby Rose in there, you had some Common in there. I mean, you could tell there was more money thrown at the movie. I just don't necessarily think that it was a better movie. Hitting the Bueno, I'm gonna say that this is the best of the John Wick movies, and that's because it did something different with the mythology, finally, because at the end of number 2, John Wick basically has slain somebody on the Continental grounds, and that is against the law of these high table people who basically are the overseers of this huge network of assassins and stuff like that. All these killers that are, you know, high dollar and off the grid and all this other stuff. It was really cool in this. I can't remember if it was the case in the first and the second one, but it was very, very apparent in this one, where everybody's using little slide flip phones and little old school stuff. No smartphones. They are not trying to be tracked, and even like in, it's almost like a secretarial, like, war room, networking room of sorts, where all of this stuff goes through when the price is being put on John Wick's head that we see at the very end of the second film. Yeah, since he slayed that, but since he killed somebody on the Continental grounds, he's gone rogue. There is a $14 million price on his head. He's been, like, excommunicated, so to speak. And yeah, everybody at the beginning of this film, because it picks up right where the last one left off, is after him. And the action is fucking bonkers in this movie, man. Seriously, there are some of the most ridiculously righteous set pieces, and I must say, like, being late to the John Wick party and watching the first and the second one back to back about 6 months ago in anticipation of this coming out, whereas the first one, like I said, hit me in the feels, and the second one impressed me visually, but there was not really any key action sequences that just wowed me like in this one. Seriously, and this is definitely the most violent one too. Like, we're talking, like, and creative too with some of the action sequences. Like in the third act, there's some bits with people coming in like full body armor to the Continental after John Wick. And I'm not spoiling anything here, y'all. I'm just, mentioning an action set piece. This isn't divulging any plot details. And so, since they're all body armored and stuff, he's trying to shoot them, it's not working. And so he has to start like ripping like the helmets upwards so he can shoot him in the neck, and he's like pulling armor away to shoot in the side, and just really creative ways of trying to kill all these people that are after him. And I mean, there's some stuff on some motorcycles with this like team of ninjas basically going after him, and they're coming up beside him and trying to slice at him. We get John Wick on a flippin' horse, for God's sake. That's a really dope scene, and he's like hanging over the side of the horse while it's trying to shoot him, and then he like slides over, and like there's these other scenes where he's in the stable and he's like whacking the legs of the horses, and they're like kicking, the guys just flinging these dudes, like so awesome. But my favorite scene is early on where John Wick realizes, because he has this 1 hour that Ian McShane's character has given him to escape and try to get away, and to give him the leniency, because it's at McShane's New York Continental Hotel for these assassins that he decided to kill somebody, which is not allowed. It's supposed to be safe grounds for all these, very shady people and whatnot. And so, yeah, he's going through Chinatown, and the word goes out that, the hit is on, the hit is on, the hit is on. And he finds himself in this, like, armory of all these different, like, daggers and small knives and stuff like that. And it is some of the most badass hand-to-hand contact throwing of knives and stuff, knives and eyes. Like, it's nuts. It's genuinely nuts, and I don't think he did all of the stunts and all the choreographed fights in this, but you could tell that he was doing a decent amount of them, and man, they're awesome. That scene just made, like, I was so entertained. I mean, yeah, it was just legit. I had so much fun with this one, and even though the story is a little paper thin, and I guess I'll get into that in the MALO, it told just enough of the story, and thankfully it wasn't a revenge story like in the first two. So even though it wasn't exactly like too much deeper than a kiddie pool plot-wise, as far as, okay, everybody's after John Wick, they're all trying to kill John Wick. John Wick has to escape from the city and go over to, and you see this in the trailers, John Wick has to, get across the pond and get over to, like, I guess to Asia, basically, and then he's trying to track down, the head of this, this table of sorts, these people who preside over all of the assassins and just kind of keep them in check, and, everybody else that's under the table and whatnot. It's an interesting analogy, I suppose. But yeah, so he's out trying to seek out forgiveness from the head of this table, essentially, and redeem himself, so to speak. And that's really as much as I can say without spoiling stuff. And that's the simplicity of the plot. And Halle Berry is in this. She's good when we get her. She has these two badass canine German shepherds, and those are actually some of my other favorite scenes, is where her and John Wick join up in team, join forces and stuff, and they shoot at her dog, and she's like, "They shot my dog!" And Keanu's like, "I get it." And I've gushed about the action enough. I have to get into the MALO, because there is MALO in this. This is definitely the worst acting from Keanu in the series, legit. Especially his delivery of dialogue. I feel like his lines are shorter in this than in like any of the previous two films. I mean, we get a lot of like 1 and 2 to 3 word responses from our boy here, and maybe that's for the better. I don't know. And also, I know it was written into the script, presumably, to be this way. In the third act, when he's been just going and going so long and fighting so many different people and smashed through all this glass and just, all of this fighting and all of this killing, and he's somehow kicking and he's somehow still fighting. The fighting starts looking pretty sluggish. It starts looking like they've almost slowed the film down, and I'm not necessarily sure if that's what they did, but it feels like, but then again, they play it into the storytelling. It's almost like they start toying with each other. You know, there's so many people who are just like, oh my God, it's John Wick, and so on. And so that's interesting, and it does lead to bounce back to BUENO really quick. There is some funny fanboying in this from people who are just like, I can't believe I'm fighting John Wick, and it's pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, there's not really a lot of bad aside from some of the hammy acting and the thin storytelling and some of the predictability. But for the feo, for the ugly, sometimes I spoil things in the ugly, and there is one thing in particular that definitely surprised me and that I will mention at the very end of the feo. And so that will be a spoiler, and I'll give you, like, you know, a thumbs up so you can turn away or whatever if you don't want to have something a beat that happens at the very end of this film spoiled, because I was taken off guard, and I was like, good writing. But yeah, the ugly, sometimes feo, as I call it, as in Espanol, can be good. And in this case, it's good because the brutality is just redonkulous in this. We're talking from people getting stabbed in the head to in the eyes, like I was talking about earlier. Like, it is the most violent. I mean, both of the previous entries were violent, but this cranked it up to 11. You know, why don't you just make all the rest of them 10 and a little louder? No, this one needed to go to 11, and it most definitely did. Yeah, brutal fighting, and just so much fun. Some of the humor doesn't work though, and some of the, you know, I guess some of the feo would be just the hamminess of the acting from Keanu, because all the rest of the acting, especially from McShane and from the dude who works the front desk, whose name I cannot recall. God, he's this badass black actor, and I've seen him in a ton of different stuff. He was in Monster Party recently. Oh boy, he was in the Little Woods movie that I loved so much, that had Tessa Thompson and Lily James. Yeah, but anyway, he's great in it. I mean, and this Asian dude who is brought on to be like leading this task, for he's in disguise as a dude making sushi and stuff, but he ends up getting, you know, the task force together in Chinatown to go after John Wick once things are really rolling and stuff. And yeah, the fighting is brutal, and it's ugly, and it's that good kind of feo, I will definitely say. So, okay, I can't wait anymore, so I'm gonna give a thumbs up here in a second when I'm gonna jump into the spoiler, okay? The spoiler ending, all right? The ugly, because it surprised me, okay? You ready? Okay, so we get to the end of this film, and what has essentially gone on is everybody who John Wick had help him after he broke this big rule and killed somebody at the Continental, basically everybody who has put their neck out for him, and we see Anjelica Huston at one point. She's running this really cool Russian ballet/wrestling school, and apparently we find out that John Wick was an orphan and that she raised him, and we find out his real name and everything, which is really cool. But so basically everybody who helped him out, they have just comments back at him, like Lawrence Fishburne and Ian McShane. And then also people who aid him in his escape, like Anjelica Huston, for instance, and like Halle Berry, people who owe him a favor because he helped them in really dire, drastic times too. Yeah, they have their own problems that they find themselves in as well. And it really does turn into just cameos from those two women in a lot of ways. They have much smaller parts than I would have liked, and in some ways I think that was kind of ugly. And so this is continued spoilers. But essentially, when McShane decides to go rogue because they're like, yeah, you broke the rules, and so we're going to kick you out of your leadership role here at the New York Continental. We're going to give you 7 days to vacate and find your successor. He decides he's not going to do that. And so after John Wick cuts off his finger and declares to the head of the table that he's going to go back and kill McShane, decides he's not going to do it, and then, yeah, he teams up with McShane. McShane opens up his vault arsenal with 12-gauge shotguns and pistols galore and just all kinds of craziness. And there's a really funny scene where they're like, we need armor-piercing rounds, and he's like, 12-gauge armor-piercing rounds. And when they go in with the shotguns and they're just going after all the guys in the full body armor from the table and stuff, and they're just blowing their heads away at close distance and stuff. Man, it's so violent. I loved it. But so this really big capital C chick who is the one knocking everybody around and, you know, trying to kill Laurie Fishburne and, you know, going after Anjelica Huston and maiming her and just all this different stuff. She's the one who's being a real bitch face, and she ends up kind of backed into a corner after Wick just keeps killing fleets and fleets and fleets of her forces, and she's like, let's parlay. And so Wick shows up at the very end of the film on the rooftop where the negotiating is going on between McShane's character, his right-hand man, the awesome black dude that I mentioned who works the front desk, and her, and then Wick shows up and he's like, parlay? And they're like, yeah. And so she's like, well, I guess we can say that you are showing that you're still capable of defending this place, and that, you know, we're gonna give you your control back. And McShane is like, cool. And then this bitch is like, so now what do we do with John Wick? We have to do something with John Wick. And McShane's like, well, we kill him. Boom, 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 boom. And he just shoots the shit out of John Wick, and he falls off the roof of this building, and like he smacks one thing and smacks a guardrail and hits the flipping garbage at the bottom, and you're like, holy shit, did that just really happen? And all of us in the theater were just like, legit, seriously, seriously, seriously. And McShane's just like nonchalant as ever because he's a damn good actor, and I can't wait to see him back as Swearinger in the Deadwood film that's coming out on HBO here at the end of the month. God, I'm stoked for that. He's such a great actor, and he's great in American Gods and pretty much anything that I've seen him in. But the way he just kind of, okay, so now back to business and stuff, but then they find out that, yeah, John Wick's body's disappeared, and then you find out Laurie Fishburne's not dead, and they want revenge, and so yeah, they basically set it up for a fourth film. Just keep bringing them on, man. Seriously, this is like the most entertaining action series going on right now. Forget the Bournes, forget the Bonds. This is where it's at with the John Wick movies. Even if the dialogue is hammy, I love that they're R-rated and so redonkulously over the top. I had so much fun with John Wick, and so I'm gonna give thumbs up again. So we're back into okay territory. Ready? Ready? Okay, and we're back, and so yes, I had so much that, like I was telling a friend of mine, I was texting her as I was on my way out of this movie, I was like, that was a violent delight. I love that shit, man. It was so much fun, and I am going to give John Wick 4 out of 5 Fuego Fireballs. That's right, this is a Fuego film. 4 out of 5, y'all. I totally recommend the hell out of John Wick 3. Parabellum. So, I've been Jaime En Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Obviously, here on YouTube, Enfuegotainment. Porfa and gracias. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't done it. Hit that little bell ding-a-ling thing so that you can get the notifications about any time I am putting up new content, which is at least a few times a week, whether it's a film review. I'm going to be getting back in the month of June into doing something called Enfuegotainment Live, the Nightly Nerd. And it's basically going to be me geeking out about the cool entertainment news with an edge, the hottest on the planet of that day. And I'm debating if I'm going to do it just at the end of the week, or if I'm going to do it a few times a week, or every weekday, or whatever. But there's also going to be still at least one review coming, and a retro review. The Star Wars coverage is continuing. Next up, I have Dooku Jedi Lost, which I just got done listening to on Audible. It is an audiobook exclusive, and it explores the history of Count Dooku from the prequels. It's a fascinating read. I also have reviews up for the recently released Claudia Gray Star Wars novel, Master and Apprentice, and for the pre-prequels Marvel miniseries, Darth Maul. And yeah, so both Master and Apprentice and Darth Maul are up already, as well as all kinds of other stuff here on Enfuegotainment. But if you know me from my other channel, yeah, you probably like the Spooktacular, all things scarific, and that can be found with yours truly and a team of amazing peeps on The Horror Show at youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. And we do trailer reactions, convention coverage. We got back from Texas Frightmare recently, where I got to interview some amazing artists. Director Chad Archibald, who wrote, directed, and produced the amazing I'll Take Your Dead, one of the best films that I've seen all year, as well as The Heretics, Bite. I mean, the guy's incredibly talented. Shout out to the Great White North of Toronto, Canada. And yes, it was great getting to meet him and do some chillaxing in the Big D of Dallas. So I guess that's going to be the end of the proceedings for this installment of Enfuegotainment. So I shall say, until the reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos. I hope that we get to see one another sooner rather than later. And until then, stay strapped, mofos.